All right, welcome back, everybody. It is the Awesemo.com Nhl Dfs strategy show. We've got a big slate to discuss today. We're going to break down everything over the next hour. I'm Jake Hari, joined by the inventor of the Josh stack. Once again, Josh Harris making his second show for Awesemo. How's it going, Josh? How was the weekend for you for Nhl Dfs?
It was not bad. I had a good cash the other night. Blew it all back in NFL, but that's how it goes. It's got a nice slate tonight for a Monday. Got a lot of spots, a lot to talk about.
Yeah, this whole week, I think we've got a pretty good schedule. I think it's either next week or the week after that where we get a little bit uneven. But they did a nice job the first 10 days of the season balancing things out. And, we got 5 to 8 games or so every night, except for yesterday. There was going to be a 3-gamer. It turned out to be a 2-gamer because Dallas. When do they actually make their debut for the seaon? Are they able to play?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they're still because they had 17 players test positive, so I don't know where they're at with their protocols. Could be sometime this week. Could be March. We don't know.
We've got quite a bit to go in terms of figuring their stuff out, but hopefully they can. We've got 8 games for tonight. Nothing really to review. Yesterday, the tournaments weren't very good, so not a whole lot to talk about. It was a 2-gamer, and it was Chicago and Florida Chalk, and they ended up scoring a handful of goals. Pittsburgh's top players disappointed a lot, even though there were 7 goals scored in the game. So just kind of a weird one. I had a decent lineup or 2 in the top 20. In the big one, got to hit the nuts on the 2-gamer. I didn't quite hit the nuts, so I ended up losing a little bit of money.
Got to get the defenseman right. Carlson also went full 0. Duclair went full 0. So
Wenberg went full 0. Everyone was surprised about that. I had him in one of my better lineups. I usually never play this guy, but on a 2-gamer, I ended up playing some Alex Wenberg, and then I realized why I did not do that pretty much at all last year, even on short slates. Guys that never shoot, not actually very good for DFS. So just remember that as a general rule going forward if you're new. All right, let's go through it for today. 8 games. We're going to start with one of the better games on the night, maybe the best game on the night, Winnipeg and Toronto. We have a 2.9 implied total for Winnipeg, 3.6 for the did I say Blue Jackets before? Maple Leafs. I'm seeing Blue Jackets on my screen. Maybe that's why I said it. But that was the earlier game. This is the Jets and the Maple Leafs. Connor Hellebuck and Freddie Anderson are going to be your goalies. Austin Matthews right now coming in at the highest owned player on the slate in our ownership projections, which you can get as a part of your Awesemo NHL Pass or a Platinum Pass if you want to get everything on the site. So go to Awesemo.com, join to check those out. Anyways, Matthews going to be really popular, as is Mitch Marner, as is Joe Thornton. Projects okay value. He's cheap, and he goes to those 2 guys, and he's on the top power play. There's a bunch of good stacks tonight. Where does Toronto 1 rank for you, Josh?
They're up there for me. I don't like Joe Thornton. I mean, he's coming off a multi-point game, and those are going to be few and far between. But if you look at Toronto 1's numbers with Thornton, it's 3 games. It's a small sample, but they had their numbers are ridiculous. They have a 74% Corsi for percentage, a 2.29 expected goal for percentage, or 2.29 expected goals for. But it's kind of misleading because, 1, minuscule sample. 2, Joe Thornton's taking all the face-offs in the O-zone. and then Zach Hyman's taking all the faceoffs in the D zone. I mean, that helps if you're playing Thornton, but again, he doesn't shoot. So for me, for Toronto 1, going Matthews, Marner, and Riley if I can fit it, depending on the rest of my build. I do like that second line as well because Laine's out. Not that he's some world beater defensively, but the Jets aren't great defensively as a whole. So if I'm going to go to the second line, I like Tavares with Nylander. If I'm going to use them, I want some correlation on defense. I'll use Brody there.
Yeah, bunch of options in this game. Winnipeg 1 picking up a little bit of ownership. We'll get Ehlers in. It looks like he's going to play tonight. You mentioned Patrick Laine. Laine's not playing. It's going to be Matthew Perreault playing on that second line with Stastny and Kyle Connor. Not super interested in the Winnipeg side here, especially with Winnipeg 1 getting a bunch of ownership. I think they're fine. I'm not going out of my way to play them, I don't think, for tonight in terms of getting over the field. And then I like the second line. Do what you want with VC's cheap. He scored a goal, I think, in the first game and was able to complete that stack on opening night. Feel free to leave him off if you'd like. Just go Tavares and Nylander. That's not a bad option. You mentioned Brody with Tavares and Nylander on that second power play because they really are splitting up their top guys within the 2 units. And then Toronto 1, yeah, so we talked about it. It's just I don't understand why. You don't even want to get to the second unit, right? So why would you put guys that matter on it? Unless it just doesn't make sense. Some guys.
The coach is just galaxy braining himself. Just put your best 5 guys on and roll them out for a minute 45. If you're sucking wind, throw your defensive guys out at the last 10 seconds. So when it comes back to even strength, you're ready to go. But I mean, I'm not a coach, but that's what I would do.
Right. Yeah. It seems like it works for some of the top teams. So I don't know. You'd think it'd be a copycat league in that sense, but some coaches kind of just refuse to do it. Toronto being one of them. I'm not getting to the field on Toronto 1, which is scary, but we've got Taylor Hall, Eichel, and Sam Reinhart that we'll talk about in the next game. We've got some low-owned, really good lines like Carolina 1, Nashville 1, depending on what you think of them. St. Louis has a pretty big implied total. I like Minnesota a little bit tonight. I know their implied total isn't super high, but I think it's a really good spot for Calgary as well. And then I mentioned McDavid, but also one of the better lines in all of hockey. Montreal 1, if you just go by raw numbers over the last couple of years, they've been insanely good at 5-on-5. And then Vegas as well. So because of there being so much ownership on Toronto, unless our ownership projections update and they drop quite a bit and the ownership flattens out, I'm not going to get to the field on that. I'm probably going to be at under 10% of Toronto 1, which is a little bit scary. Matthews is probably going to score here. I'm just hoping that he doesn't score 2 or 3 times and try to get over the field on some of these other really awesome plays. So got no problem with them, but it's just not where I am putting the majority of my exposure tonight. Anything else in this game before we move it on?
Yeah, just one of the last things. There was a question on whether who's going to take Laine's power play 1 spot. There was some confusion whether it's Ehlers and they're going to run 5 forwards or it's going to be Morrissey. And I know Stastny's moving up. So, and on top of that, if this was last year, you would see the Kerfoot line match the Scheifele line. However, with the amount of minutes that Matthews has been seeing, and they hard matched against Montreal 1, I would imagine it's going to be Matthews against Scheifele. And I think that also favors Toronto. So for me, it's, if I'm going, even with the ownership, it's Toronto 1 for me.
Even with the ownership? Okay, yeah. I'm not quite there, so we'll see how that works out.
It's just we were talking before the show. You want the early hammer of Matthews, you want the late hammer of McDavid. I think we'll find out which hammer was correct if either are.
I put Vegas in that category though too. I think Vegas is just as good of a play. They've got 2 lines that are really good. One that I think is especially good that will probably have one low-owned player on it. So I don't know. There's just 1 or 2 too many spots for me to just hammer this Toronto chalk in MME. So just going to close my eyes and go under the field here. Maybe if they do go off, I'll still have a couple bullets that I could potentially win back some of my money with. But I think if they go nuts here, I'm probably going to have a losing night.
I mean, the slate is big enough where if there could be, multiple paths to victory, unless, unless like Matthews has like a 5-point night. But we'll see.
All right, let's go to Buffalo and Philadelphia. We got a 2.8 implied total for the Sabres, 3.2 for the Flyers, minus Ullmark and Carter Hart are your goalies. I believe Ullmark's confirmed. We don't have him confirmed right now on the lineup builder.
He is confirmed, yeah. 68.
Yeah. So he's super cheap. No Sean Couturier for the Flyers. That is really big for them. Maybe not as much offensively, but defensively, he's one of the better two-way centers in the NHL. And then for Buffalo, the big news here is that Sam Reinhart, it looks like he's going to be playing top line, top power play. So we saw Casey Middlestat skate with Hall and Eichel yesterday. That looks like it was just going to be a placeholder. I believe Reinhart is officially a game-time decision, but I'm pretty confident he's going to play. Tage Thompson moves down to the third line with Eakin and Toby Reeder. I like Buffalo 1 here. I think we were talking about a little bit in DMs before. No Couturier. That's certainly going to help Buffalo 1's cause. What do you think of them going up against this Flyers team?
Yeah, I mean, Couturier out really hurts them defensively because now you're going to have the Hayes line hard matching against Eichel. Hayes, he's a good player, but he's not the two-way defensive center that Sean Couturier is. And if you look at their stats, right, there's a big sample on Hayes and Farabee together. It's over 300 minutes. They have only a 50% Corsi for, and they give up 10 high danger chances, scoring chances against per 60. And then you throw Drew into that mix, and that certainly cannot help their defensive numbers. So the one saving grace for the Flyers are they have good defensemen, and Carter Hart is a very good goalie. So that does give me a little bit of trepidation using Buffalo. But if they are coming in lower owned, I do really like this first line because they're all on power play 1. They're like 17 and change for the full line. You can get them with Rasmus Dahlin, who's only 4,000. So that doesn't really hamper your salary too much. And as long as they're not too high owned, for me, it's going to be, the Buffalo 1 here. I do like the second line. It's pretty cheap. They're going to see, I'm not sure who they're going to see. They might see, the Morgan Frost line. They might see the Nolan Patrick line, but you get Eric Stahl and Dylan Cousins combined for 5,400 on power play 2. So I think, if you're looking for like a very low owned filler in 150 lineups, I think you can have some of them.
Yeah, for sure. I don't mind Buffalo 2, just really cheap. They've got real players. It's not like they're just a cheap third line that helps you fit in like Toronto power play or something. Like they could potentially be a decent line in terms of shot generation and such. On the Flyer side, I mean, they have the higher total here, and I'm not seeing too much that I love here. Sorry if you mentioned him, but Frost centering Lindblom and Konechny, just basically taking Couturier's spot. How big of a downgrade is that for them offensively? I mean, they're showing little ownership, and they're really cheap, and it looks like Frost's going to be on the top power play as well.
Yeah, I think, Frost is going to get some ownership just because he is 2,500 in power play 1, and Konechny is coming off a hat trick, and his price is still only 5,300. It did go up, I think, 900 from last game. I mean, I kind of do like Philly 1 a little bit here. I don't like that Lindblom isn't on the power play, but, a Frost, Konechny, Provorov 3-man is okay. I mean, if I'm building like how I build 1 to 3 lineups, they're not a priority for me on this slate. I don't like, the Hayes, Giroux, Farabee line going against Eichel, even though they may see a bump in time on ice because if they do hard match, they will be on the ice more. For me, Flyers third line, Patrick, Voracek, JVR would probably be my favorite line. Fully correlated power play 2. Who who is their power play too? Oh, Gustafsson, yeah, and he's still under 3,500. So that's probably where I'd be for Philly. Some Morgan Frost Konechny, and Provorov or Flyers third line.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's just that the Flyers are a little bit too balanced, so it's not like any one of their lines is popping in my exposures right now. Getting to a little bit of the Frost line, I try to limit like third lines as much as possible. I know they're necessary on some even bigger slates like this, but I don't really consider the Patrick, JVR, Voracek line a true third line. Like they all get secondary power play time, and they're really cheap. So I don't mind them as well as a throw-in if they help you get in McDavid, Draisaitl, or something like that, or Toronto. But that just might be where they're a popular combo. So just make sure that if you're using them, like the cumulative ownership in your lineup isn't super high. You're not playing like two of the highest owned defensemen or something like that. That would be the only thing I'd say on the Flyer side with that depth line. But I'm getting to about 15% Buffalo One right now, which is looking like almost triple the ownership on some of these guys. They're one of my highest owned stacks on the slate, which doesn't feel great that they have a 2.8 implied total. But I feel pretty confident that's going to be a really good 5-on-5 line offensively. I don't know how they'll be defensively, but no Couturier kind of pushes them over the edge as far as being in that upper tier for me tonight. So I'm riding with Buffalo One in this game quite a bit, and I'll mix in Rasmus Dahlin as well on the top power play for 4K. Anything on the goalies, or are we ready to move it on?
Yeah, I mean, Carter Hart, 8,400, that's kind of like a little pricey considering what they're going against without Couturier. Even though, like, his last game, Couturier went out after the first shift and he shut down the Penguins. It's still a little pricey, I think, for me, GPP only if correlating with Philly. Olmark, 6,800, I like in GPP is just the one thing that always concerns me with playing a goalie against the Flyers is, the dreaded 3 goals on 24 shots and you lose and you have no value there. Especially without Couturier, I don't know what to expect. But at 6,800, I will take some stabs in GPPs on Olmark.
Yeah, I mean, just too cheap, right? And if they can generate chances, if you're even close to if there's even a chance to get to that 35 save bonus at 6,800, you should probably be in play in pretty much all formats, cash, GPP. It's weird. Like, usually you wouldn't play these super heavy dogs in tournaments, in cash games, but I'm seeing more and more like respected players do that just because they have a chance for the 35 save bonus, especially on DraftKings. On FanDuel, it's kind of like the old way where you play the favorite or the slight favorite that's just underpriced. But it's really kind of changed over these last couple of years. People start to figure out this new scoring, and in GPPs, like, I love playing these cheap guys, so I'll get a lot of Allmark correlated with my Buffalo One stacks as well.
Yeah. Let's
go to Carolina and Nashville. We've got a 2.9 implied total for the Canes, 2.7 for the Preds. James Reimer and Pecorino are your expected goalies here. Couple cheap lines here on the Nashville side. Nashville won 4,100 for Johansson, 48 for Victor Arvidsson, and just $5,700 for Philip Forsberg. They had a good outing. I can't remember which game it was, but in one of them, I think they doubled up their opponents in shot attempts when they were on the ice. I don't know whether this line's going to be like they were last year, where they were pretty bad at 5-on-5, or 2 years ago where they were amazing at 5-on-5. Probably somewhere in between, but Carolina, one of the better Corsi teams in all of the NHL, really for the past 3 or 4 years. And then I suppose you could consider this Nashville 2 line. Carolina 1, a little bit more expensive than I would like. Even Nino's price has gone up to 4,600. They're getting almost no ownership, but just low totals on both sides. Is there anything that you really love in this game?
I mean, not particularly. I think, Nashville won because of the price, but I think if they're going to go up against Carolina 1 most of the time, I think that favors Carolina 1 pretty heavily. I mean, they have a huge sample on their numbers. It's one of the lines where you can look at and go, oh, I don't have to, relying on 3 games of data. They have a 60 Corsi for percentage, 2.52 expected goals for, 10 high danger scoring chances per 60. And the thing that sticks out defensively for Nashville 1 is they give up a lot of high danger scoring chances per 60, which 13. And so if this is a high-paced top-line matchup, I know the totals are low, but if you see a hard match there, I think this definitely favors Carolina 1. It is a little bit pricey, $18,000, and you're not getting full power play 1 correlation on the Carolina side, but it's hard to go wrong with Carolina 1 there.
Yeah, I think I tried to. So what I usually do is crunch like more lineups than I need. So if I'm playing 150, I'll crunch like 200 to 300, just to try to get more combos and then kind of pick out some of the worst lineups, some of the ones that have the most, like the highest chance of being duped. And I got to almost no Carolina still, making a lot more lineups than I needed. So they're low owned. They haven't really had a breakout performance just yet, and they played the Red Wings twice. So they've been a little bit disappointing. Maybe a spot where you can take advantage of some recency bias here with the low ownership. But I don't think Nashville is pushing. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm saying on the flip side, it's a perceived tough matchup, but I don't think this Nashville team is the same team they were a few years ago. I mean, you have Nick Cousins on power play too on this Nashville team. I mean, their depth isn't great. I mean, they still have Yossi, they still have Ellis, Ekholm, but like this isn't the same team that, is going to go compete in a Western Conference final. I don't even know what division this is. Central. I don't even know these divisions right now, but you know what I mean. They're not going to go. This team's not going to go compete for a Stanley Cup this year, I don't think.
Yeah, fair enough. Still getting some respect from Vegas with an under 3 total for Carolina here. What are your thoughts on Yossi? We're showing him getting a bunch of ownership. That's probably just projecting in my lineups, honestly, just because I always play this guy no matter what. He is our highest projected defenseman on the slate, but nowhere near the best value. We've got him at that under 2x threshold on DK, just under 13 DraftKings points. What are your thoughts there as a one-off here, or with Nashville 1 on Yossi?
I'd be more inclined to play him with Nashville 1, because 7,000 is a little bit pricey. If you're going to try to fit in, another line, you're going to have to sacrifice if you're going to use Yossi. And 7,000, there's other defensemen that I want to use, like Petrie. He's still mid-5s. Even Dougie, he's 1,000 cheaper. He's on power play 1 for Carolina. I think I'd rather go to him as a one-off. I don't. If you're going to play Yossi as a one-off, I mean, go for it. If you have, these two, if you're stacking 2 lines in the mid-range, I think Yossi is a good play there. I prefer Yossi to Burns. So, but for me, if it's down to 1 lineup for me, I'm going to use him only if I'm using Nashville 1.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. And I think he should probably be boosted if you're using Nashville 1. So, like, if you guys are using Fantasy Cruncher, if you're using the key group boosts, maybe this is a spot where you do that, because you're probably not going to get to a ton of Yossi organically unless you boost him manually like I do. But yeah, I think you should bump him up, give him a 10 or 15% bump in lineups where you're playing like full Nashville 1. He's a really good guy to include in that if you're expecting 4 or 5 goals from Nashville or some sort of outlier performance. So I like Yossi as a one-off. Like I said, he's our highest projected guy, not by a whole lot. So there's a bunch of other guys that are going to keep his ownership down. Carolina was the most penalized team in the NHL last season. And granted, that's been a long time since the regular season. It's been almost 10 months. But pretty much the same personnel. I'm sure it's something they worked on in the offseason, their limited offseason that they did have. So maybe you're hoping for an extra power play or 2, and you can get there on shots and blocks with a guy like Yossi. So just feels like he's so safe no matter what. And that's why I end up with a lot of him in my lineups. I feel like I'm different enough elsewhere. You can find the low price stacks that go off, and then he can be in a winning lineup, even if he doesn't get like 30 plus DK points or something like that. Carolina, yeah, I think we kind of went through everything here.
I don't like what they did with their second and third line. They moved Svechnikov down to the third line. And I just kind of, I would have definitely had some Carolina too if they kept him there, but they didn't. So that kind of
that's
sucks.
ugly. Like Martin Nook and Jesper Fast. That's, and then it makes the line so expensive. Like he shouldn't be 6,800 if he was playing in that third line. So you can't even get him super cheap. This one not great. I'm gonna get a bunch of Yossi per usual, and really light on Carolina. Some Nashville 1 with my Yossi lineups, and that's really about it. What about Rene, 7,700? Carolina usually puts up a good amount of shots. Is that a guy in your mix?
Yeah, I mean, a GPP, I wouldn't play him in cash because, Carolina could, 4 goals in a heartbeat, but 7,700, he's kind of in the mid-range there. He probably won't get too much ownership. Not that goalie ownership really matters unless it's like a chalk goalie that ends up being the nuts. But Rene, for me, is probably going to be a GPP correlation play. Reimer, kind of the same deal.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the San Jose and the St. Louis Blues. 2.6 implied total for the Sharks, 3.4 for the Blues. Devin Dubnyk making his Sharks debut, and Jordan Binnington. No surprise on this Blues side. He's $8,200 though, and probably not going to see a whole lot of volume here. Big total for the Blues, one of the highest on the slate. They're underpriced. Feels like we had 15 of these spots last year where they're going to be popular, and they're cheap. And they help you fit everything, and then they dud, or they score like 3 goals, and no line gets more than 1. What are you seeing for this Blues team going up against these pretty lowly Sharks?
I kind of like the Blues lines. I don't really like the power play correlation. The Sharks just got ran over by the Coyotes last game, like ran over. And the Coyotes are terrible. So that makes me interested in the Blues a little bit more. If you're going to have the O'Reilly line going against the Couture line, I know Ryan O'Reilly kind of likes to grind the pace to a halt, but the Couture line has been high event city these first few games. So I think that favors both of these lines, really, if they open up the ice a little bit. I always like the San Jose second line, Hurdle and Kane. It's not the best matchup here. Blues are really good defensively. I mean, they'll probably avoid Pyarko, but this game as a whole, if I'm MMEing, I'll have some, St. Louis 1, just because I think people are going to leave off Sanford because he's power play 2, but he's only 3,200, so that makes that line pretty cheap. Second line is Schwartz, Shen, Kyrou, same deal. People are going to leave off the third wheel there, but Shen and Schwartz are power play 1. There's some correlation there. You can, put him with Torrey Krug. I think there's an avenue here for the Blues. It just feels awful clicking them into your lineup. I don't know why. It just doesn't seem like. I feel like if Martin Jones, Party Marty was in net, I'd be more inclined to use the Blues. But Dubnyk's kind of a question mark. He's hot and cold. He hasn't played much. He came in relief against the Coyotes, but we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, like the thing with the Blues is like a bunch of good real life players and guys that when you watch them, the announcers are raving about, like O'Reilly and Perron, like all these. Was I muted there? Am I good? I can't tell.
I can hear you.
Tyler, am I good? All right, my bad. Yeah, I'm seeing my mic was muted, so it's coming out of the computer, I guess. But anyways, they're guys that get raved about. You're watching, but it's just they're not necessarily like the greatest DFS players. It feels like the Blues never really have that like 6-goal outbreak that we see out of some of these teams that are much better for DFS. It may not be as good real life teams. So like they should dominate the possession here against the Sharks. They should score a few goals, but it feels like it's never concentrated in when they're scoring. And the ownership isn't even that bad. It looks like they came down in the most recent ownership update.
And there's some one too. Like they're underpriced.
Yeah. So I mean, this is probably a decent spot to play them. They're not as popular as I thought they were going to be earlier in the day. So I don't mind St. Louis 1 here. You got to get that second goal at least, and probably a third goal unless you can get 2 full liners or something like that for them to be in contention for a GPP winning lineup. Because even though they are cheap, like they're pretty tough to fit in with an Edmonton power play stack or a Toronto 1 stack or something like that.
Yeah, I think
So you got to find that
now
mid-price line. Those nuts.
I'm sitting here. Maybe you can power play stack the Blues because it's cheap enough where you can have an expensive one-off in there. I would imagine because the most expensive player on the power play is O'Reilly. He's $5,400. Shen is $3,600. That's wildly cheap for him. Not that he's some world beater, but still.
Yeah. All right. Let's. Do you want to talk about any defensemen? Krug, is he a guy that you play as a one-off? That was one question I had for you. I was going back and forth whether or not I play one-off. I'm leaning towards no and just including him in my STL1 stacks, but what do you think?
Yeah, so when he was on Boston last year, I didn't even one off him. I'd rather one off Charlie McAvoy, and I think in this spot I'd rather not. On looking at the Blues defenseman, there's not one that really jumps out going, oh, I got to play him. Pyarko 4,800, that's cheap. He sees a lot of minutes, but most of my Blues defensemen will be, correlated with a line. I think, the one-off from this game is probably Erik Karlsson. He's on the ice for like 25-plus minutes. He's 5,800, 1,400 cheaper than Burns. He's power play 1. Sees a ton of ice. So if I was going to go for one-off, it'd be Karlsson. Yeah,
I was scrolling through my exposures before the show, and I ran everything like I was going up to lock right before the show whenever I have time. And I got to 3% Brent Burns, which is crazy. 7,200 is not that weird of a price. Maybe a spot where you could get a bunch of block shots and flirt with the 5-shot bonus as well. I think I'm going to get to more than that and just end up manually boosting him. I still think a lot of upside, even though maybe he's washed. I know some people think he's completely washed. He's still 7,200. He's not going to get a ton of ownership. And in my non-Yossi lineups, maybe he's a way I can differentiate with an expensive defenseman that
you're
not a ton.
Definitely going to get some leverage. No one's going to be on him. So if he goes off, you're going to have tremendous leverage to the field there.
Yeah. So it's weird that you can play like a low-owned Brent Burns. We haven't been able to do this for a few years. But yeah, I'm not really on any of the San Jose lines. If San Jose 1 was a little bit cheaper, I'd probably be on them because they're going to get essentially no ownership. And I think they can be a good generating, just like shot generating line and get a bunch of expected goals per 60 over the course of a season. But going into St. Louis, probably going to get some time against the O'Reilly line. Shen Schwartz is no pushover either. And even the third line for St. Louis is good. I'm just not on San Jose. And that's really all I've got. Again, I'm probably not playing Krug if I don't have a St. Louis 1 stack in that lineup. So just not my game. The type of guy I'd like to one-off. All right. Before we move it on to the next game, you guys have heard me talk a little bit about how we got a new Twitter account. It's just Awesemo Nhl Dfs. We just switched over accounts. The old one, if you follow it, if you just go into the bio, you can just click on that link, and that'll bring you to the new one. Give that a follow. That's where you're going to find all the breaking news, anything that pops up throughout the slate, up to lock and then through lock as well. So we've got News God tweeting out stuff that we say in Slack, and we get channel alerts. So that's a really good account to follow, even if you're not in the premium Slack. If you want to get in the premium Slack, it's the quickest way to get some good information that we've got. We've got a bunch of really good players in there talking. Subscribers looking to learn. I don't think it's very intimidating in there. A lot of people willing to help, myself included. And we've got packages starting as low as $3.95 per week. You can get Fantasy Cruncher as an add-on with one of the weekly or the monthly packages for NHL. You can upgrade to Platinum, get everything on the site. But if you get an NHL package, you get NHL projections from Awesemo himself, ownership projections, the top stack tool, the lineup builder, and again, premium Slack. That is probably one of the more valuable tools, especially for NHL, NBA, NHL. Those are really good resources if you don't have the time to grind through every bit of news like some of the top pros. Minnesota and Anaheim. We've got a 3 implied total for the Wild, 2.5 for the Ducks. Cam Talbot and John Gibson are your goalies. Not seeing a whole lot of ownership on Minnesota. Some guys picking up a little bit. Parise, Kirill Kaprizov, he's up to 5K, but again, not getting a ton. Fiala getting just a sprinkle. None of the defensemen getting a whole lot of attention either. I guess Spurgeon for 3,700 might be a guy that people go to. I don't really love the Ducks here. Maybe the Wild are going to be a little bit better than I thought this season, but that's just based on their first 2 games, I guess, against not very good teams. So what do you think of the Wild tonight? Do you like their prices?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why Victor Rask. Well, I do know why, because the Wild don't have any centers, but I don't really like Victor Rask on this top line. But Parisi, Capriz, I don't know. I'm gonna call him Krill. But I don't. Yeah, Kaprizov. There we go. Kaprizov. How about that? I like him with Parisi, and you can even use both defensemen here, Spurgeon and Dumba, because they were both on power play 1 to get a little different 4-man stack there. I think the Sam Steele line is going to try to match the Rask line, which definitely favors Minnesota here. Top line of the Ducks, Henrique, Silfverberg, Raquel. They're probably going to go up, see some depth there, but they've been awful. So, I mean, I don't have much interest in this game. I do prefer the Minnesota side. They have a sneaky high total. They don't have much ownership, so this could be a good spot to get some leverage on this slate.
Yeah, I kind of like that their lines are a little bit even here. Neither line picking up a bunch of ownership. And so I'm mixing them both in as kind of value stacks, I think. Either line has a path to victory. I'm not exactly sure what the matchups are going to be. I mean, you've got Fiala on one line with Bonino, who's probably the better center, and then Parisi, who, depending on the coach, might consider him the top line with Kaprizov. So not exactly sure how the matchups are going to go. I just think Minnesota's the better team. They've got a few more playmakers and, again, low ownership across the board. You can mix in Dumba and or Spurgeon, depending on the price point. We've got Spurgeon projected for more points, but that's going to make him a little bit higher owned than Dumba. So I like both of those guys. Take your pick depending on what you have left over. I think Dumba is probably the better one-off anyways in general. Guy who shoots it a little bit more looking to score some goals, whereas Spurgeon would be more of a correlation play with the top 2 lines, and specifically probably the top line or the Parisi-Kaprizov line. But then you got to play Victor Rask, and that's the only issue there. He doesn't do a whole lot. He's 3K. I don't know if
he's played 10 minutes a night the past 2 games. So I mean, what are they doing?
Yeah, they moved Bukestad down to the 4th line.
Yeah.
I'd much rather have Bukestad up compared to Rask, so that might even get switched mid-game.
That's an indictment on him if he's getting moved down. I mean, I don't know. I want to see Joel Eriksson Ek get some run with the big boys at some point.
So they want Eriksson Ek line. That's like their best defensive line. They have really good numbers. So they don't really do a whole lot offensively, but they're just huge. Foligno, Eriksson Ek, and Greenway. So they and it feels like they're just never going to get broken up since mid-season last year. So I don't know. I like Minnesota here. I'm not really crazy about Anaheim, especially not Anaheim 1, because they're getting double-digit ownership. I really don't understand that. I don't think they're a great line. Minnesota may not be a great team, but they're going to be pretty stout defensively, I would think. So
there's a couple one-off defensemen that I don't mind. Cam Fowler is 2,900. That seems low for him. I mean, Shattenkirk on power play 1, 3,500. I mean, if you're looking for a final defenseman in your lineup and you have 3,500 or 3,000, I think Fowler and Shattenkirk are okay. They're not great, but they see power play minutes.
Yeah. All right, let's go to Vancouver and Calgary. We've got we actually have Holtby in right now. I think I need to update that. It looks like it's going to be Thatcher Demko. So I'll recheck the projections on that, get that corrected. Jacob Markstrom going for the Flames, 2.7 implied total for the Canucks, 3.3 for Calgary. Calgary's pretty cheap, and they have one of the better implied totals, close to 3.5 goals. And the second line, well, depending on how you look at it, the Monahan-Gaudreau line getting some ownership, Lindholm, Kachuk, and Dylan Dubé which I think could be a pretty good line as well. They're getting about half the ownership of the top line. So do you have a preference on the Calgary side? And then it looks like JT Miller is going to return for the Canucks, taking his rightful spot on the Pettersson-Besser line, which also has very solid numbers in a big sample going back to last season. What do you like in this game?
I actually like the Canucks side a little bit better here. And I'll tell you why. This is the third straight game they're playing each other. You have the narrative of Markstrom going against his former team, shutting him out the last time. But now JT Miller comes back. JT Miller slots in on power play 1, slots in on line 1. You're going to see that Lindholm line. I think that favors Vancouver. I think, the Canucks are going to be lower owned here just off recency bias. Vancouver 1 is full power play. You can get him with Quinn Hughes. He's a game time decision. One thing I would recommend if you're using Vancouver 1 with Quinn Hughes, leave a couple $100 salary in case he's out, and you can go up to Edler. But my favorite play from this game is the Canucks top line. But on the Calgary side, I do like both of these top two lines. I think for me, just off of, if you take ownership out of the question, I think I would go to the Gaudreau, Monahan, Levia line, even though Lindholm has been very good to start the season. But I don't mind Dubé either. As I was trying to find the way I was building my lineup, some cheap one-offs, and I found myself clicking on Dubé a couple times, but I ended up flipping over to the Canucks side. So for me, it's Vancouver 1, Flames 2, then Flames 1, and then Vancouver 2. I think I don't think their matchup is terrible. Hoglander's getting up there. He's 3,900 now. Horvat 6,200, and then Pearson moves back down. I think that gets the depth for Vancouver a little bit better.
Yeah, and Hoglander's probably going to move to the second power play, right? With Miller back taking his top power play spot. So a little bit of a downgrade there. I mean, he's still under 4K. So if you want to play him, by all means. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you on Vancouver 1 here. Like, this is a line that is going to be one of the reasons why I'm going under on Toronto 1, is because you can get a really low-owned line that has good numbers, has a pretty good matchup, and is fully correlated. And you've got a couple of question marks, which is good if you're paying attention to news. Quinn Hughes, their power play quarterback, who's shooting a little bit in his first couple games, which is good to see. Still probably would. What'd you say?
I said way more than last season. He wasn't doing anything outside of the power play last season.
Yeah, so he's up to 5,500. He's probably not going to shoot enough most games to get there by himself. He's going to rely on multi-point games. But this could certainly be one, especially if Miller returns. Probably going to play with them some at 5-on-5. Good call on leaving a little bit of money to swap up to Edler if you need to. Or even you could swap down to Nate Schmidt. I think he would probably take the top power play duties.
I'm not.
So
I'm not 100%.
You got some options there. But just be around at 8:30 Eastern before the start of this game. Make sure Miller's in. Make sure Hughes is in. And if he's not, make your swaps after that. But, yeah, I like the Vancouver 1 call. Right now, I'm also pretty heavy on Calgary 1 and heavy on Calgary 2. So this is, I guess, my favorite game looking at my exposures. It's only a 6 total, so maybe it goes a little bit under the radar. And when I say favorite game, I just mean I'm getting a lot of exposure, not necessarily that I'm game stacking or anything or going out of my way to do that. I might have 1 or 2 in my 150, but I like to stay away from game stacks on bigger slates. I think it's just generally a little bit overrated when people see a high total. I'm more looking for the outlier on one side or the other, the 5-1 games, the 6-2 type of games, and trying to find that other stack in a different game. Did we talk about Gio or Rasmus Anderson up to 4,600? Feels like just yesterday he was at 3K.
Yeah, I still like Rasmus Anderson here, power play 1, 4,600. I'll start getting concerned if he's in the mid 5s or up, but I think 4,600 is still reasonable. Giordano, still fine one-off, 6,300. That's about where he's been. most of the last season. But he was on power play 1 last season, but he still sees his minutes. Is Demko confirmed? I know there was like confusion because Holtby was in the starter's cage, but Demko was the first off the ice. So
yeah,
I guess that's news you gotta be around for as well.
I think Holtby is actually $200 more. So someone asked me that in chat. Now that you're saying that, someone asked me that, and we don't know just yet who's actually confirmed. Both have been confirmed by different beat writers. So yeah, that's going to be a fun situation. If you're worried about it and you're worried about getting stuck, like if you have a Martian one-off and don't have the extra $200, just crunch like Holtby's in, put your lineups in, and build however you do it like Holtby's in, and you can always.
Or you can go down to Darcy Kemper and buckle up, but we'll get to that later.
Hey, I mean it's not the worst idea, especially if you're chasing in a tournament. And you need a big score. You're close to a big score, and you need that last little push. That's not going to have a lot of ownership. So yeah, we'll get to that in just a minute. Right now, we've got Montreal and Edmonton. 2 more games before we head on out of here. If you could, real quick, someone said I looked like Henry Rowan Gardner. Is that the guy from The Rookie?
Rookie of the year. Yeah.
The Rookie of the Year. Yeah, he's the Cubs guy. I guess I'm a Cubs fan. I don't know. I got to see
some hot ice. Hot ice. You heat up the ice cube.
Yeah, so I haven't seen that movie since I was a kid. Maybe I need to watch that again and see if these guys are right in chat. They're saying hit the like button if I do look like him. So yeah, just hit the like button. That helps us build the channel. We're coming in on 50,000 subscribers. We really want to hit that before the Super Bowl. So if you guys could, if you like what we do, if you want to get notified about when we go live, hit the notification bell. Really, really helps us out. And yeah, it's a nice thing to do, makes us look good for the bosses. 3.2 implied total for Montreal, 3.2 for Edmonton. Jake Allen going, no Carey Price, and Mikko Koskinen for the Oilers. A couple line changes. I thought we might see Puljujarvi up on the top line with McDavid and Nugent Hopkins. Doesn't look like that's going to be the case, at least to start with. It's going to be Cassian. He's been up there a bunch of times with McDavid and Nugent Hopkins. Second line pretty much stays the same. Draisaitl, Cahoon, and Kyler Yamamoto. Tyson Barrie, 4,300 DK. Can't quite get his price right, but they're a little bit closer than 3,300. Probably needs to be bumped up. He's going to be somewhat of a popular defenseman pick. Still probably cheap enough where I'm okay playing him as a one-off. He's not like the highest volume shooter, but he's also not a good example of a guy who doesn't take really any shots. And then you got Montreal. Suzuki looks like he's possibly taking that next step, playing with Josh Anderson and Jonathan Drouin. And then one of my favorite lines to play, Montreal 1, Tatar, Danault, and Gallagher. So a lot to like in this game. What are you seeing as far as where you're going?
So I don't know what Edmonton does with their top line and their power. They have Alex Chiasson on the power play 1. He's on the 4th line with who knows who. I don't even know. The thing is, like you see Jake Allen starting, and everyone's like, "Oh God, Jake Allen's terrible." So I think that's going to bump the Oilers' ownership higher than Connor McDavid was 8,500 on a 10-game slate on a back-to-back, and he was still 22%. But maybe this Jake Allen news pushes the ownership down a little bit on Matthews. We'll see. I think both these top lines in this game are great plays. If you want to get a little bit less ownership as a whole on the Oilers, play Zach Cassian, as ugly as that may be. He is 2,900. He's not on the power play, which sucks. I mean, but if you're worried about being too chalky, I think you can plug Cassian in there, as gnarly as that is. I love Montreal 1. I hate Montreal power plays. But if I'm going to use, Montreal 1, the Danault, Tatar, Gallagher, going to use Romanov. He's up to 4K. He's on power play 2. Projections right now have him, through the roof because he has such a small sample. He's been going nuts. But, is he a 4K player? That remains to be seen. I also love Montreal too in this game. I think them going up against Edmonton too is very beneficial to them. I think as long as Anderson stays healthy, that second line is going to be a force all season.
Yeah. So the strength line. I mean, so the thing with Edmonton is, like they're always stackable for their power play. Whenever you can realistically fit them in, it's tough tonight. But DK is helping you out with $4,300 Tyson Berry, so you can do it. You can power play stack with Chase on if you'd like, 2,700. I mean, that's one of those Joe Thornton plays.
You may need to take a cold shower after doing that, but
not the most arousing play there. But yeah, it's pretty much Edmonton PP always in play. I don't mind playing Cassian tonight at 2,900. Hope McDavid throws one off his skate and in the net. We've seen that happen. He's not like the biggest plug in the world, I guess. He can actually, score a goal here and there. I think he might have had 20 goals last year in the shortened season. Maybe I'm thinking of Zach Hyman. Anyways, he's not the worst for 29. He's going to play with those guys.
The one thing I will say, you were saying you wanted to one-off Tyson Berry. I prefer Darnell Nurse as a one-off. They're the same price. Nurse isn't on power play 1, he's on power play 2, which doesn't see much time. But Nurse at 5v5 sees a lot more minutes. I mean, he's in the 20s. He blocks shots. His peripherals are better. I think Berry's a fine one-off as well, but just because he gets the power play correlation and Edmonton power play is so deadly. But I think, from a peripheral and time and ice perspective, I'd go with Nurse.
That's actually a really good call too, especially this being a late game. Like, I can picture a scenario where you kind of you're in a good spot with your first few players. Your first stack went off, and maybe you don't have the absolute nuts. You've got Edmonton 1 with Tyson Berry. You could just swap Tyson Berry to Darnell Nurse, and that's probably going to get you an ownership match there. And yeah, it's a lower probability play, most likely. Just because it doesn't correlate as well with those guys, but 5-on-5 does get a lot of time there. No Ethan Bear tonight. That's kind of a weird one. I don't know. Did you see that? Are they just scratching him? Or?
Yeah, Bear and Jones are out, and they got Nurse with Cuckoo Kachu. Or wait, is he with them? Barry might be with him, but and then Larson's with Legeson. I don't even know who that is.
Yeah, it's pretty ugly. Edmonton does some weird stuff. And then Connor McDavid saves him, scores, 3 goals and adds in a couple assists every few games. So yeah, I mean, I like Edmonton. I like the top line better to stack, especially with Cassian. Tyson Berry, I'm going to have a bunch of them, at least to start with. I might end up swapping off a handful of Tyson Berry lineups, depending on how I'm doing in these first few games that lock earlier. And then Montreal 1, I think I'm going to have, they might be my highest owned stack on the night.
The one thing I'll say about Montreal 1 is I wish they correlated with Petrie before his price gets too expensive. Because he started at 4,000. He's up to 5,600 on power play 1. I just wish they correlated him because Petrie is my favorite defenseman play on the Canadiens tonight.
Yeah, I agree. And he was another one where I was looking through my exposures and I had him a couple lineups out of 150. And then I saw his price and I realized why. He's not quite a $5,600 play here, but he's going to be really low owned. Maybe as a one-off, you could see him having another big game. He's already had one so far this season, but he goes a little bit better with the Suzuki line if you're looking to stack him with someone.
And Shea Weber is kind of like a Burns type play, right? I can't imagine there's too much ownership on Weber tonight.
No, not at all. Yeah,
he's still got a bomb from the point. So
yeah, I like the call as well. Getting these low-owned one-off defensemen, especially in a high total game like this, I'm surprised he's not picking up much ownership. Maybe he'll come up in the last update, but a lot to like in this game. We almost don't even need to talk about McDavid, really. He's just going to get his 20% ownership or whatever it is. On a 6-gamer, he's going to get his 30%. unless it's 9K or something, or he's got a terrible matchup. But yeah, he's pretty much matchup proof. And Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, kind of know the deal with these guys. It's just basically whether or not you want to eat the ownership. But I feel pretty good about Montreal tonight. I don't have a stack right now owned at over 20%. I'm playing a really spread out style tonight, but I think I'm able to because of that ownership in Toronto and just going under the field there and then hammering some of these other lines that maybe don't project as well, but they're kind of in that second or third tier. And I would consider Montreal one as one of those. All right, last game on the night, another good one. One of my other favorites for a different reason. 2.3 implied total for the Coyotes, 3.3 for the Vegas Golden Knights. Darcy Kemper, $6,900 Darcy Kemper going up against Robin Leonard, $8,500. Yikes.
Yeah.
Arizona, you mentioned that they ran through San Jose. A little bit different competition here. Vegas, maybe the most stacked team in the NHL. I mean, they're playing Alex Tuch on their third line. He's a pretty good player. He's 3,600, maybe a guy that you want off. But the main course here is the top two lines for Vegas. The Carlson line, they're cheap. Riley Smith's 3,600 makes that line really, really affordable. So they're looking like they're a little bit more popular. But then you've also got a line who has some of the best numbers in a pretty good sample that we've seen over the last couple seasons. Stevenson, Pacioretty, and Stone, a little bit more expensive, but a little bit less owned. Who do you prefer here? And then are you going anything on Arizona's side?
Well, so Oliver Ekman-Larsson's out too for a while. He got tangled up with Kane. I think concussion. He's going to be in the protocols for a little bit. So that hurts Arizona as well. I think who slots in for him? Capobianco, I think maybe. I don't know. I mean, so for me, I really like the Pacioretty, Stevenson, Stone line. I know people don't like Stevenson because he's not on the power play. He's 4,000, but I mean their numbers are insane. They have close to a 250-minute sample, 61% Corsi for, 3.75 expected goal for, 17 high danger scoring chances per 60. I mean, this line is just elite. And they're going against, the Coyotes, who are not a good team. So if I haven't looked at Vegas ownership percentage, but I imagine they come in under Toronto, under Edmonton. So I think, this is a prime time spot here. And I do like the second line too. Riley Smith, 3,600 power play too. That's just really cheap. Vegas 2 as a price play, I think, for me, but if I'm going down to it, Vegas 1.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that I'm a little bit worried about with Vegas 2 is just that because they're cheap, because everybody knows it's kind of a good spot, they're really easy to fit in with some of the other more popular stacks like Calgary, Monahan line, Winnipeg 1 if you're going there, the O'Reilly line. So some of these lines that I talked about, I don't like how the lineup is coming out overall, but I understand why they're getting a bunch of ownership. So in the Vegas 2 lineups that I do play, it's going to be with some more off-the-board teams, some PP stacks, something like that. Like you go with the Carlson, Marchessault, 2-man, leave off the chalkier, I presume chalkier Riley Smith. So there's a number of ways you can attack it. I prefer just going pretty heavy on the top line. You mentioned their numbers. Stevenson with Pacioretty and Stone. Stevenson's not great, but you pretty much, and they have, put anyone between those two guys, and they just generate chances like as good as any other line in the NHL. So love Vegas. Their defensemen are pretty expensive, so it's tough to stack them up too. You're going to have to find a really cheap line if you want a 4-man Vegas with or Vegas 1 with Pietrangelo. But I'm going to try to figure out some ways to do that. I think they just run over Arizona. Mix in Tuch if you'd like to stack that second power play unit. They kind of split everything up. Like some of these other teams as well. So you just got good players all over the place for Vegas, and that's not really the case for Arizona here. Any closing thoughts?
I mean, the goalies in this game are interesting because Leonard 8,500. I don't think he needs a shutout and like at least 25 shots to be the GPP winning goalie. I would think. And on the other side, you have Darcy Kemper 6,900, right? And you saw, I mean, this might be a bad comparison, but you saw in the playoffs that Thatcher Demko absolutely just like shut them down. Saw like 40 shots, gave up a goal. If you're thinking that kind of performance, you're going to get Kemper at 1, 2, 3%. And also Jacob Chikrin, 5,900 power play one for the Coyotes. Way too expensive for my taste, but he's going to be stepping up with OEL out. His time in ice already has been bumped up this season as it is. So I think, as a low and what off, I think you can maybe go there.
Yeah. This is a really good slate, actually, talking through it. Like, I like some of these games individually, but I feel like I'm comfortable with where I'm at on ownership. I mean, watching Toronto score 4 goals in the first period isn't going to be fun for me. But I guess
it's a 7 o'clock game, too.
Yeah, so the winnings are not going to look good. Hopefully they look good at the end of the night. That's all that matters. Someone's asking for our favorite 3 lines. We're running out of time here, so come into Premium Slack. We go through every game. We watch the show. You got 2 hours before lock. Hit us with a like on your way out. That really helps us build the channel. And subscribe, more importantly. If you're going to do anything, subscribe to the channel. Awesemo.com/join if you're looking for some packages. You can see all the tools, ownership projections, all that. Tyler, thanks for producing. The deeper dive is on in about a half an hour, so stick around for that if you're playing NBA DFS. We've got the best in the business doing it. Good luck tonight, everyone, and we'll be back tomorrow.